Hello, everyone. I'm Dan Gay, Chief Marketing Officer of BlockCerts Blockchain, and we've got a very interesting conversation this morning where I am in Denver, Colorado, or this evening where our guests are from all over the world. And we're talking with Mr. Jim Needham, who is the Chief Strategist with the MERJ Exchange. Good morning or good evening to you this evening, Jim.
Hey, Dan. How you doing? Thanks for having me here.
I'm doing great, thank you. And for those of you that are just joining us, the MERJ Exchange is one of the fastest growing exchanges, at least it was in 2019 and 2020. We're going to find out why, and we'll hear a lot of debate and questions on different exchanges. And we're also here with Tiffany Johnston, our Chief of Staff at BlockCerts. Good morning, Tiffany.
Good morning, Dan. Nice to be here.
Great, thank you. And then also Daniele Mensi, who's the President of FusionSTX. Hi, Daniele.
Hey Dan, how you doing? Thanks for having me here. Hi Jim. Hi guys.
Hey,
great, and I can't wait to hear your take on this as well, as we've talked earlier. And then also Tim Vasko, who's the Chief Executive Officer of BlockCerts Blockchain. Good morning to you again, Tim.
Hi Dan, great to be here again.
Great. So just to kick this off, Jim, can you just tell us a little bit about the exchange and why you believe that you're the fastest growing exchange? And we're talking about legal reasons and other things, but maybe start us off there, and then I know we've got a lot of questions from Tim coming up here as well.
Yeah, of course. All right, thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
So to give a quick background of MERJ, I mean, we're a traditional stock exchange, really. We began in 2011. It was a response to an economic reform program actually put in place by the IMF in the Seychelles post-economic crisis to regenerate and diversify the Seychelles economy. And a key part of that was to build a financial services industry. There was no securities market or securities market infrastructure there. So the government put out an RFP for operators to establish and operate the securities market infrastructure for the Seychelles. We were the group that was awarded the mandate to do it. And since 2011, we've been building. What we tried to do is build a new type of stock exchange. We started from a blank piece of paper in 2011. We're able to use technology in neat ways. We're completely vertically integrated. So we've got all the exchange, but also the clearing settlement layer and the depository and registry layer in-house. So we're a bit like the SIX market in Switzerland, like that. So we have the ability to adopt technology in a way that reduces red tape, increases efficiency, reduces costs. And we've built a listing framework that we think suits the evolving needs of issuers. So we've tried to bring in all the traditional stock exchange investor protection, a recognizable standardized listing framework. And we're combining that with the benefits of, forward-looking tomorrow's technology. And in this particular context, we're talking distributed ledger technology, to really try and build a marketplace that's the best of both worlds. And I think it's that addressing of the needs of issuers and investors that has led to our growth, which has been pretty phenomenal over the last 2 years, as that World Federation of Exchange data has highlighted.
So, Jim, how many listings do you have on MERJ right now?
We've got 47 listings now, with a total capitalization of about 1.75 billion US.
Awesome, that's awesome. So
we're still tiny by major market standards, but we've got that. We've done that first bit. We've got the momentum. We've got that first bit of scale.
Are you seeing new business models emerge? I mean, why do people come to MERJ, and why do businesses choose to list there? Is this you mentioned distributed ledger technology, which AKA blockchain. So can you kind of explain what the mix is of the organizations you're seeing come on there?
So one of the things MERJ has tried to be as a stock market is not quite as insular as most national stock exchanges are. So we're open to listing in a variety of currencies. We also work with regulated partners from all around the world. They don't have to have a presence in the Seychelles to become a member or broker or a sponsor. So we've tried to build a kind of global framework rather than a sort of insular domestic stock exchange framework. And we use blockchain or distributed ledger as one tool really to simplify and streamline the complex parts of running this multi-product, multi-currency, multi-jurisdictional platform. But it really is just one tool that we use. But it enables us to support issuers of securities that want a recognizable listing framework, as is taken very much from the IOSCO kind of framework of listing. They want that recognizable framework, but also we offer the ability to support digital tokens. And we very much see blockchain as a kind of transaction layer. It doesn't necessarily need to be something that is front and center for investors or issuers, but it does have the potential to support these new business models like you sort of alluded to there. It increases transparency. You can automate reporting. You can increase the you can bring in new business models which reward loyalty. You can have incentive programs. There's a lot of stuff you can do with a security that is represented as a dynamic token that you can't do with a security that's represented by a, we call them paper certificates, they're electronic certificates, but they're still kind of static in nature.
Right. So it basically brings kind of that smart contract element into the securities industry for the first time, where you can actually tie in business ops and benefits of those operations into the actual framework of the security itself.
That's right, exactly. And the way we see it is it's not down to us to come up with the business models, in the same way that Airbnb and Uber and these kinds of businesses were born out of a combination of, fast networks and smartphones. We're providing the infrastructure for these types of businesses to live on. That's what we see ourselves as doing.
Cool. So with that, there's before we were on the call, we were talking a little bit about this idea of DeFi, and so we've obviously seen many evolutions in the blockchain space. The most latest one was this idea of decentralized finance, which removes certain layers from market making and things like that. I've seen lending or effectively what becomes a bond portfolio out there in DeFi and things like that. And what would be that evolution in your view? Like, what's going on there, and how do you think that might play out in both traditional finance as well as what's it going to force, what's it going to create, or is it just another hype ICO market? Do you have an opinion there?
Yeah, I mean, I'd qualify this by saying I'm not an expert on the DeFi space, but I mean, I definitely see value in what's being done there. I think there is, the concepts and the principles behind it are fantastic. Stripping away certain layers, certain intermediaries, giving people sort of sovereignty over their sort of effectively banking relationships. But these decentralized movements, quite often, the ICO phrase you mentioned there, the intentions are good, but there's you'd have to caution against the potential of bad actors finding a way to exploit it. Right. And I think we're in the business of listing companies, and there are places you can list on decentralized exchanges. What we have got, which we think is very important, is a kind of recognizable framework for, the same things that you would have to do if you were going to list on the New York Stock Exchange or NASDAQ. Right. Corporate governance, reporting obligations, what disclosures you have to make, what the auditing requirements are. These things have to be standardized, in our opinion, and done in a way that's kind of what underpins a fair and transparent marketplace. And without these sort of traditional old world rules around what can list and what information has to be made public to the market, what channels it has to go through, without these things in place and without somebody overseeing them, actually, despite the great success in the DeFi space, the vast majority of investors in the world want that sort of stuff to be around the things that they're investing in. And without it, I think it's difficult to see any, major sort of turnover of the traditional financial systems.
So one of the things that I think, and we've talked about this, one of the things I think is a major failing in traditional finance is this idea of cost, time, control, especially when it comes to the smaller businesses, which we know we need to get more aggressive with, especially in the current economic situations globally. Liquidity for those markets, private investors coming in, and then having an option sooner. So few companies can go through the traditional route to list on an exchange. Even if you do have really good financial standards and transparency in the front end, the criteria are so onerous and the costs are so onerous, most companies never ever will make it to an IPO listing. So what I'm looking for, or I guess asking, is how do you see that reconciling out? How can we take the best of both worlds, which is this ability to speed things up, drive down costs, and have frameworks that are, do what they're intended to do?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's very much something we had in mind when we built our listing framework and we looked at different markets around the world, because I think you need to strike a balance. There's a reason that there are less companies going public, and that's been a downward trend for 10, 15 years. There are a reason why companies have been staying private for much longer. And as you say, a lot of the major markets have got quite onerous obligations. I think there's a need to strike a balance. So we built our listing framework. We're not really trying to target issuers like Microsoft, Coca-Cola. We're looking to attract early stage companies, venture-backed companies, alternative assets. So we've tried to build a listing framework that is appropriate for those types of companies. We've got 3 different boards: a main board, an SME board, and a venture board, and they all have slightly different requirements. But we've tried to strike a balance between putting enough information into the public domain that people can make informed decisions about what they're going to invest in, but not tying the issuers up in too much red tape.
Right. That just drives cost, and as we've seen even in the US with regulatory frameworks coming out saying, no, we need to make it easier for these small businesses to get out there. You got things like Regulation A that started opening that, and now with the pandemic, some of these special exemptions that allow companies to actually get out and raise up to $10 million with very little barrier to entry. And when I look at business models now and we look at economics, we're looking at businesses that really are emerging and going to be replacement businesses. So how do you go back and say this is historic cash flows when in many cases, take travel for instance, or even retail, that cash flows went away. They're gone. We have to evolve new models and new measurements for these business models. Do you think MERJ is a good place for those kinds of companies to be saying, hey, I want to set my sights on that kind of an exchange and that kind of model to both attract private equity as well as provide that really nebulous thing called liquidity?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. And liquidity is the key question. Everybody comes to us, everybody asks it. And, when you're talking about small early stage companies or venture-backed companies, it wouldn't matter actually what marketplace they listed on anywhere in the world, because there's a limit to the sort of liquidity you're going to get on companies of that profile. What we talk about really is the notion of fluidity. It's like making it frictionless for people to transact if they want to. And there's a place they come to, in the private markets, you've got to do, there's this quite a bit of a dance you have to go through if you want to do a transaction. We're trying to make sure that we reduce that down to the bare minimum, and that's done by putting all the information that you can up front when you do the listing, in the listing particulars, and then when it comes to a trade, because of the nature of our market, you can transact with somebody, from anywhere in the world, and it's really, it's a very, very straightforward process, and there's a very small fee attached to it. You don't have to get lawyers and go through all sorts of due diligence in order to be able to do the transaction.
So Daniele, you've done a lot of research and thinking about this. DeFi space. I know that we've had extensive conversations on both the liquidity pools, as Jim puts it, the fluidity of the market, the ability to make these transactions without market makers and so forth, as well as some of the financing space. How do you see all that kind of playing out when you have, on the one hand, let's take MERJ as a world-leading example of a marketplace that is truly bridging that gap between traditional regulation and this emergence of tokenization and decentralized models, the distributed ledger technology, as well as you've got on the other end. I kind of look at it as this huge pendulum out there. On the other end, this craziness of maybe DeFi coming back in to make that perfect marriage of what a more fluid market is. I like that word fluidity, Jim. But how do you see that, Daniele? You've been spending a lot of time in that DeFi world.
Yes, and I am still. So I do see DeFi as an evolution of what we used to think about the blockchain was, in the sense that now, if you look at also the events that used to be blockchain Congress, whatever, all of them, they are renamed in DeFi something. And it's not about the name, it's just that DeFi brings some level of innovation. So number one, what I like about DeFi is that it brings some advancement in technology. And just to name, there are a couple of things that I'm very interested about, which is number one, it brings it's called AMM, Automated Market Maker, which is it's a different behavior, it's a different technology, it's a different interface on how an exchange works, not via traditional order book, but via a complete automatic matchmaking between buyers and sellers out of a liquidity that is being defined previously into a decentralized exchange. That's step number one, which I'm not saying it will change dramatically the way the industry as a whole is going to work. It's a level of innovation. Then if it's changing, if it's improving everything, I can't say, but it has started to adopt something we've never seen before. That's step number one. And by the way, this has been in place since November 2018. So it's 2 years and something, even though only now we realize there is a DeFi, decentralized exchange, whatever. This is not something new. It's in development since years, and only now we start seeing something. Because
some
one of these
applications of it, right?
Yeah, because this exchange is, it's handling about 1 billion of trading volume a day, and now you start seeing it. But it's something that started a way ago. And secondly, with the DeFi, we start to see a blockchain of blockchains. We call it parachains.
Right.
And there is one protocol that adopted this technology, which, by the way, I was checking, is the 4th by market cap.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, probably you never heard of it, or you heard of it. It's called Polkadot.
Polkadot, yeah.
Polkadot.
Yeah. Is the 4th cryptocurrencies by market cap, by after Bitcoin, Ether, and USDT.
Mm-hmm.
And but most of the people in the industry never heard of it until probably a couple of days ago when they've seen 100% price surge. So, by the way, so to me, I'm interested about DeFi, about the level of innovation that it brings. But I don't think that DeFi is changing everything. I rather believe we're going to a higher level of maturity in the industry, doing things better and more efficiently as a whole. But still, to me, DeFi is not a standalone piece, because if you trade, for example, token or decentralized exchange, you need to get those tokens. And ideally, once you buy tokens, you need to be KYC'd. So there is a level of misconception by people that think that a decentralized exchange means I can do anything without being verifying my identity. But you need to ramp in the world by, for example, starting using fiat. So there has to be someone that vets your identity, that allow you to make a wire transfer from fiat to crypto, and then afterwards you can move your tokens into whatever wallet and then trade on a decentralized exchange. There is a level of misconception that a decentralized exchange, you can do anything you want without being KYC, but you have to do it before anyway, and someone else should bear the cost out of it. So to me, this DeFi word, it's so interesting, but I do see DeFi as an incremental step, as a very high level of innovation, and not all the DeFi projects are true innovation. So this means I'm very passionate about these incremental steps and this level of innovation as opposite what it used to be. But I'm not saying that DeFi is everything I believe on or in crypto.
As I listen to both you guys, and as you both know, I'm very much a fundamentalist. I look at what makes technology work and how does that monetize? How does that actually generate revenues? Here's what I hear is DeFi is a piece of the puzzle that could start bringing together fundamental utility, if you will, or utility being something that actually has substance to it, something we can measure. It's not just a white paper, an idea. It's maybe, in our case, in BlockCerts' case, it's software, it's a platform, it's stuff that gets used every day, and there's a business reason for it. There's a monetization, a revenue model for it, tied to less friction, to use your words, and Jim, tied to
fluidity. Yeah.
The fluidity tied to this idea of reducing those costs and allowing that, if you will, marketplace to emerge for liquidity that may not otherwise have been possible. And I think that's really the thing, is you've kind of got a three-way street here, or a structure that says, on the one hand, we've got an exchange. On the other hand, we've got a business that needs to expand, find capital, find more resources for distributing what it does of value in the world. And on this hand over here, we've got a way to build that fluidity, if you will, through either a equity liquidity place or a debt liquidity place, because both of those are emerging. And so, keep hitting that word merge.
I was going to say one of those okay boomer things.
Yeah, this is, it really is merge.
It really is.
Of these elements that really are the underpinnings of financial markets. Would you guys agree with that? I mean, I'm a fundamentalist. I'm not a technical guy. I've never looked at I've looked at the candle charts and all that, but I don't trade them. So
I think I agree, and it's at one end of the spectrum you've got decentralized systems, and then at the other end of the spectrum you've got securities, which kind of by definition have a central issuing authority, right? And you've got a registry, and you've got all these things. So what's happening is that there's a shift from the pure decentralized world and the decentralized currencies, which are effectively bearer instruments. There's a shift from there in some way towards the world that we're operating in, which is securities. And at some point they're going to meet in the middle. The danger is that there's been quite a lot of people have tried to use this technology to skirt around regulation.
Right.
And if you have spent any time in the securities industry, you just know that's not going to fly.
Right.
So we're kind of reluctant to spend any time and energy on stuff that looks like it's trying to get around securities regulations, because we just say it's a waste of energy. But there are definitely people who are trying to harness the technology, and there's a lot of very smart people and a lot of brain power that's been sort of sucked into this world, who are trying to use it in a way that squares with regulation and actually enhances regulation. And not to talk you guys up, but I think that's really where you sit and where your strength is, because you're taking the technology and using it in ways to enhance regulation, streamline regulation, bring down the cost of regulation, and that is really valuable, and it sits very neatly with what it is that MERJ is trying to do.
Right, and I would point out that we're not alone in that journey, because we do have the Digital Financial Standards Observatory, which is Columbia and the Gates Foundation. And I think when you get thought leadership on the other side of the spectrum, which is academic, right? This is it was interesting speaking with those guys, and in one of our discussions we had for this forum, we found out they were looking at this for 10 years, right? So they started looking at M-Pesa, which was the very first successful digital currency out of Kenya. And so when we look at this, I believe that there are nuggets that are the puzzle pieces that do merge together. And I do love the name MERJ. I love the name of Daniele's company, Fusion, because it truly gives that sense of, we know there's things we can do technically that are going to match and take care of those stakeholders, which are regulators and securities investors and businesses that need capital and liquidity markets that need forming outside of traditional markets like Wall Street and the LSE. So, that's what's exciting to me about every time I get on with you, Jim. There's another evolution, and we're able to do that and have these discussions. And I hope we can have many more. And of course, we get to do that with Daniele on almost a weekly basis now on what's happening with Fusion and even in the crowdfunding space with Fusion Funder coming up and those kinds of things that really start these models. And what time in the world was ever more important than this for what?
Yeah, I do. You know why? I just want to make a comment there. So there's a lot of debates surrounding centralized versus decentralized. And honestly, I'm not that interested about these topics per se. So centralized or decentralized, what really matters for me is what truly makes sense to build over a centralized or decentralized model. So you cannot really say centralized, there are, for example, there is a common understanding in crypto that decentralized exchanges are cheaper than centralized. It's not true. Mm-hmm. For example, if you take Uniswap, to take one, they charge 0.3% fees on trading, while Binance, to take one, they charge 10 basis points, so 0.1. So it doesn't mean that centralized are worse versus decentralized. The point is that decentralized are trying to address one problem, which is the liquidity problem, mostly, okay? While the utility problem is not addressed by anyone.
Right.
No one is addressing the utility problem because centralized, I'm talking about now, centralized exchange on the cryptocurrencies. But if we take also what MERJ are doing in the security token or in the paper stock world, that's true business, okay? Yeah. People doing business and use the exchange as a mean of going to the next step, to their growth step, to the growth journey. While in crypto space, the markets, plural, is driven by speculation. So the bridge is to bring utility on top of, to create a true value in the industry. Speculation will still exist forever. It doesn't change. So, but at the end of the day, I would like to see more and more true initiatives to bring true utility out of an underlying technology, whatever is centralized or decentralized. Yeah, because this is what the world needs today, actually.
Like I always say, like, this is my big passion, as you guys know, is trustonomics meets tokenomics. And as Jim said, we can handle these tokenized transactions. We can handle that. We've got a foundation to understand in the technology as well as in the mindset of the leadership at MERJ how tokenomics and these models will emerge and come out. And on the Fusion side, how businesses can actually take advantage of these and set up right from the beginning and build that exposure through this kind of trustonomic model. Like, this is real. This is what we're trying to do. We're not going to eliminate risk. That will never happen, ever. And nor should it. That risk drives success. It also drives innovation. It drives pivots. It drives so many things that that wouldn't exist today if we didn't have risk and the need to get innovative. But certainly we need to control that and balance that with something that's just a good idea on a piece of paper and it doesn't actually have utility. Maybe you should work a little harder in your garage before you go out and get a bunch of people's, the broad public's market. And certainly we know the stories of HP and Apple and even Microsoft and Amazon that all started in these little holes in the wall and garages that succeeded, but we need a good roadmap to get more businesses there. So at different levels too. Not everybody needs to become $1 trillion business. So with that, we're kind of running out of time, but
we need to wrap up
again,
here.
fascinating discussion, guys, and I think it's really important. And Jim, we hope we can keep pulling you in and sharing
Yeah, that's great.
about what's
I
going
enjoy it.
on.
Yeah, and if anyone has an interest, please contact the MERJ Exchange for your own listing. I mean, that you are truly merging the old with the new and doing some amazing things, and that's why we're so interested to continue to talk to you.
That's right.
as well.
And at BlockCerts, we're working with Jim on regular basis and his team, so we can help facilitate any conversations there. And that's what this is about. It's getting knowledge out there and helping. Again, make it more frictionless for everybody to participate.
Yep.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to contact me, my email is jim@merj.exchange. So it's pretty easy.
Great. Jim at merj.exchange. That's
Yeah.
pretty easy to remember. I can remember that.
Good one.
Thank you, everybody. And
Yeah,
Mike,
thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Jim.
yeah,
Thanks for everyone who's joined us from the
Stay
Asian
healthy,
Financial Fest.
stay digital, get digital with your business models, and keep in touch with the MERJ and Daniele at Fusion and all of us at BlockCerts. We're really excited to see this world evolve in 2021.
We are.
Bye, guys.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.